Welcome, super secret agent trainees, to WhizGirls Academy. Today, we are on a mission to learn about this wonderful woman that's wearing this amazing NASA jacket that you can all see. Can you see her?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay, awesome. And you can hear me too. That's wonderful. Okay, so we're going to talk about her journey as a kid, just like you guys, and I was a kid too once, um, till now. But before we start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, just because we didn't get a session with me yesterday. So I'm going to do a really quick 2-second thing. So I am Secret Agent Master Solemnia, and I had a dream job when I was a little kid. I wanted to be like Tom Hanks in the movie Big. Anybody seen that movie? No. Okay, so you should watch it. It's like a little bit ahead of your time. It's from the 80s. So you should definitely watch it because it's all about testing toys. So that's what I used to do. I used to work at Mattel on Barbie. So I'm sure you probably have heard of the Barbie movie now or heard of Bratz as well. So that's what I used to do. I used to test toys, worked on Barbie and Bratz. And then I didn't know what to do with myself. I was a little confused. So I decided to go down this path, which I call on the Tech Yellow Brick Road, which is now what I do with WhizGirls Academy and all the stuff that we do now. So that's a little bit about my background, and we're going to reschedule my session for another time soon. But for today, we're going to learn about Dottie, and she's going to tell us about her journey from childhood until now. So tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, I grew up in Colorado, and my parents both really liked science and math. And my sister and I started really falling in love with math and science as well, probably because we went to museums and planetariums. And we got to watch on television, not live, but on television, some shuttle launches. And so when I was in the third grade, I realized that girls could fly in space because the first American woman astronaut, Sally Ride, flew in space. And I watched her mission, and I also watched later missions that she was on. She was on another mission the next year with Catherine Sullivan, and both women just really started leaving that impression upon me that if I did well in math and science, that I too could maybe grow up and be an astronaut. So I had that dream, but you can't just have a dream. You have to start doing the work towards it. So like you in school, I kept working really hard, doing all my studies. I joined clubs. I joined a club called Mesa, which was for math, engineering, science applied. I also participated in a club called Science Olympiad, where we competed at the state level, and I did really well there. And then I also just stayed really active. I'm a runner. I was also a swimmer. And so I did a lot of different activities. And then I went off to college and studied geology. So had the opportunity to do research there. And eventually I became actually a high school teacher. And I was teaching earth sciences in an astronomy class. And in my astronomy class, a curious student asked, how do you go to the bathroom in space? And I didn't know how you went to the bathroom in space. And so in looking up that answer to how that engineering worked, I not only found out how the NASA shuttle toilet worked, so I could share that with my students, but I also found out they were hiring teachers, specifically science and math teachers, to be a part of the astronaut class of 2004. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're hiring teachers to become astronauts. So I applied, and I had to wait a long time before I actually got to do all the tests, but I then became an astronaut.
Awesome. And you mentioned some of your passions and hobbies as a child. And what about now? Do you have the same passions and hobbies?
Yeah, I have a lot of passions and hobbies. I still keep running. I've been a runner since I think like the seventh grade. And I also still like to swim. I did that more in high school and when I was a diver. But I still really like to sing. I knew how to play the piano when I was growing up, and then that turned into learning how to also play the guitar. So I like to do that. I love to hike and backpack and camp with my family. We live now in Washington State, so I'm outdoors a lot, either on mountains or on the water. So I love to be outdoors.
That's awesome. You mentioned singing and playing the piano. Can you do that in space as well?
Yes, actually, lots of people have played different instruments in space. We've had the bagpipes. My crewmate Naoko played the koto, which is a traditional Japanese instrument that it was miniaturized for space for her. We've got a piano, a keyboard up there, guitars. People have played the flute, the piccolo. I mean, just all sorts of instruments through time. And then my friend, who was also on orbit when I flew, Tracy Caldwell Dyson, the two of us sang in space. We have an Indigo Girl song that we both really like, so we sang that and recorded it in space.
And what does that feel like when you're singing in space? Does it feel like the same as it is on Earth?
Yeah, it felt the same. I mean, we were floating, we were trying to use microphones, and so when you're floating and there's cable cords that are kind of moving around, that's a little bit different than when we were in a band, an astronaut band called Max Q. And it's much easier to stand on a stage and just hold a microphone, or just even have the microphone stand hold the microphone for you. But it wasn't too different to sing in space.
Very cool. That's awesome. Um, okay, so your journey from teacher to astronaut, like Nemo 16 to geologist, including your TEDx talk, can you share significant like patches and show any pics that you have with us?
Oh, yeah, I would love to show some pictures. So let me get my share screen here. And so I'll show some of my pictures. Like, this is me growing up when I was in the third grade, like I talked about. And I was so inspired that when my teacher asked what I wanted to be, I made this paper mache of myself. And then this is me in my Club Mesa. I went to space camp. And when I got done with space camp, I came home and I built the model of Discovery, because when I went to space camp, the vehicle Discovery was taking up the space shuttle, or this, sorry, the Hubble Space Telescope into space in that payload bay that's in there. So that was so cool, because Hubble was going into space in 1990, and Hubble still gives us great images. So that was really meaningful to me. So that's why I built that model. And this is me in Science Olympiad, and we took second at state as a whole team, so that was pretty fun. Uh, I said I studied geology. This is me in college on an internship outside of Yellowstone National Park. And so it was summer, but you can see there's snow on the ground because we're at a really high elevation. But I really loved that internship. It was students from across the United States, and we worked together all summer, and then turned our research into publications. And so that was really exciting for us. And then this is when I was teaching astronomy. So this is one of my astronomy classes. And here's the space shuttle toilet that's down in Houston. So when I did my interview, of course, I had to take a picture so I could send it to my students. And then I thought I would share with you just a little bit about what astronauts do. So this is the class that I was a part of. It was the 19th class of astronauts. There are 3 teachers in this group. There's pilots, engineers, scientists. And you can see also one of our classmates, he's going to be flying into space later this week on SpaceX. So Satoshi is going back into space for his second time, and he'll be on the space station for about 6 months. So our class continues to fly in space. We have to work as teams. So this is out doing survival training. We had to do water survival training. And then this is part of that water survival training. It was really uncomfortable. Like, we had to get strapped into this helicopter body and dunked into water, and it just didn't feel comfortable. But we did it. And I think that's like, sometimes you will do things and you just, maybe it's hard, it's challenging, you don't feel super comfortable, but the reward was that it allowed us to get ready to fly in planes. And so we had to go through the training before we could actually start getting into the planes and learning how to fly. So I learned how to be a pilot in the back seat. I was never a front seater, but I was a back seater for the T-38 jet. And we used this almost once a week. We would fly in this plane. And then I flew on a space shuttle. So I had to go through classes about the space shuttle. So that's what you see there. These are like what we trained in, mock-ups that we get to practice in. We do a whole lot of virtual training. So we use lots of screens and hand controllers to pretend like we're actually flying a robotic arm so that when we go into space, we really can fly the robotic arm. So we do training like that. We also do training in the water. Our spacewalk training is all done in the water. And this is the crew I flew with. So I flew on April 5th of 2010. So the little girl that dreamed about becoming an astronaut and built the model of Discovery flew on the vehicle Discovery in April of 2010, almost 20 years to the day after I built this model. So I just want to remind you, like, there's things that we do that's really hard, but it's worth it. And like, all the training that you're doing at school, all the learning that you're doing is preparing you for your future. And you're giving yourself many opportunities by studying hard. And this is our crew. We were getting ready to launch. I think I'll skip to the video just so we can have more time to talk. But once we were in orbit, I was a robotic arm operator. So I actually got to use those hand controllers like I talked about. And our crew was bringing up this like module here full of equipment, science experiments, and food and clothing for astronauts. And that was really important to keep the space station going. And we happened to set a record of the most women in space. So this picture is special to me because it's of all these women who have worked hard to become astronauts, and we happen to be on orbit representing the record of women in space at one time. I was a mover, so I told you we had all that equipment, so we had to actually move it. So you can see me floating it across. I helped with the spacewalks. I didn't do spacewalks outside. I was inside talking to our crew members the whole time. And here's my friend Rick. He's outside, and so my job was to talk to Rick and Clay the whole time they were outside for the 3 spacewalks. And we were working with Stephanie and Jim, who were inside using a different robotic arm, this one that's in the center of your screen here and is with the spacewalkers. It was like a crane that helped support the spacewalks we were doing. You can see a zoom in there of them doing the spacewalks. And we got some special sunrises and sunsets, so this is just an example of that. But it was really great teamwork. I loved it. And I also loved looking out the window, seeing auroras, 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. Beautiful. You can see the Milky Way there, and then also the Earth below. We had meals together and really enjoyed special times at night when we could share. And then this is just examples of astronauts have to work out a lot in space. And so keeping themselves healthy, keeping their bones and muscles strong because they're in microgravity, and that wouldn't happen if they didn't work out. We stayed in space for a total of 15 days. 11 of those were docked to the space station. And then we came home to Florida. So that's kind of my journey in a couple of pictures there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you tell us a little bit about the patches, the significance of the patches, and then also your TEDx talk and how did that happen?
Oh, yeah. So, well, this is the patch for our crew. And all crews come up with a patch. So, like I said, there's going to be these new crews that are launching this week. And you can go online and see what the 69th and 70th expeditions look like. But in our case, we, some of the symbolism here, we have this yellow star, the 3 legs, and then the yellow star with this around it. And that is the astronaut symbol. And it comes out of the early programs, the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions that brought us together and then into an orbit. And then, of course, you've got the Earth, and the star is right where the sun would also rise. So that made it special to us. We also show our space station There are 7 stars in the patch, one for each of our crew members. And then our names are all around the edge. That's pretty common, except for less so with space station crews because they change so quickly, so they don't always put their names on it. And then we also were the 19th mission assembly flight for the space station and the 131st shuttle flight. So we put those numbers on there. And we included a Japanese flag for Naoko since she was on our crew, and that made it international. So again, all patches are unique, and the crew members design it, and they put a lot of symbolism into it. So they're not only supposed to be attractive as a patch, but then they also have a lot of meaning to what happened during that mission. And then I've had a chance actually to do a couple of TEDx talks. The first one I did was when I retired from NASA and I moved back to Seattle, and I did a TEDx talk there with some really cool people talking about like climbing mountains. Ed Viesters was talking about summiting all the highest mountains in the world without added oxygen. So it was really cool to hear about his exploration here on Earth. And then another woman was talking about the work that she did with penguins and how she protects them. And so again, work here on Earth. And then I was talking about, of course, my journey, but also about the exploration that we do in space and how that becomes possible for more and more people.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So can you tell us what you learned when you were 11 years old that you have kept with today?
Oh yeah, something that I learned when I was 11. Well, it was a hard lesson in that it was really sad. My grandmother passed away, and I was really sad about that. But in talking with my mom, it always stuck with me that my mom said, her life was cut short by an illness, but in the years that she lived, she really lived life to the fullest. And that always stuck with me. And so my goal is to always live my days to the fullest and do things that that push me to different limits, that challenge me, that make me curious, give me an opportunity to give back, so to share with others. So really just making every day count, because that is what I learned when I was 11, is that life can change really quickly. And I think all of us learned that with the pandemic too, is that our lives can change so quickly. So let's make sure to live every day to the best that we can, to the fullest that we can.
So true. That's great advice. Thank you. Did you learn about the word STEM when you were younger, like 10, 11?
I don't think I really became familiar with STEM until I was in high school and especially college. In college, they were talking more and more about STEM careers. But like I said, I was in that club MESA, Math, Engineering, Science, Applied. But we didn't necessarily say STEM a lot. We just would talk about science and technology and engineering. And I knew I wanted to be good at math. So STEM became something I talked more about when I was maybe in high school and definitely in college.
So it was always like girls can do anything, right? There was never an issue of
Well, sometimes, my parents raised me that my sister and I could do anything. But I did find out in college that when I thought, hey, I can do anything, there were some internships that had been specifically only available to males in the department. And that really bothered me. I didn't understand why, when I was just as capable and had maybe even better grades, or at least equal grades, and I was physically fit, why couldn't I do that? So I asked my professor, and that year they didn't make it open to both men and women, but the following year they opened it up. And the reason had been, and I understand this, it was because the internship was abroad in some areas where countries are a little bit more conservative and didn't necessarily have women out doing science. But I didn't understand, well, why are we sending people there then if we can't send our own students, if we're only limiting it? That doesn't make sense. Why can't we either explain that American women are able to do things, and really, I believe all women should be able to do things. So anyway, I was really glad they opened that internship up to women the following year, and one of my friends got to go on it, and she had an incredible experience. And now she works for the United States Geological Service. In volcanoes, and that really made a difference in her career track. So that was when I learned that being a woman might be different. I might not have everything open, but I was going to still try to ask and push the boundaries.
Yeah, I think it goes back to ask and you shall receive. It might be a little tricky sometimes and challenging, but you still power through, and that's what happens.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. What advice would you give our aspiring secret agent trainees in the audience?
Yeah, so some words popped up when I was sharing my slides, but I think there are four things that are really important in life that make your life feel successful. And success doesn't just mean money, it doesn't just mean acquiring a certain job. Like, to me, these four words kind of build the successful life. So I think it's really important to be curious, always wondering about things. That's what got me my job, because I had a curious student and I was curious myself. So I think it's so important to just every day learn new things, and challenge yourself. So that's the next word, is to remain challenged. It was not always easy for me to understand science concepts or math concepts, but I learned how to ask for help from others, get tutoring. My mom, like I mentioned, she was really good at math, and so I would ask her for ways to help me. I asked teachers, things like that. So remain challenged, and definitely being, like I told you, as early on in my astronaut training, it was uncomfortable at times, but you know what? It challenged me. I rose to the challenge and I was able to fly in space. I want you to also be courageous. You're going to have to do brave things in your life. Like I told you, I asked the question, why can't girls get this, or women get this opportunity to do the internship? So sometimes you have to be courageous and speak up and ask, um, that others recognize you or pay attention to you, or that you overcome fears. And then finally, I think it's good to champion for others and to care and give back. So I would say, you will have opportunities, and make sure to turn around and make those opportunities available for others. So those are the four things that I think are really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those. So, how can our secret agent trainees follow your journey moving forward?
Well, I am on a couple social platforms, although I'm not always the best poster, but I do use the Instagram, and I also use a little bit of Twitter, and then I have a website. It's dottieml.com, so you can see my name there on the screen and just squish the ML all into one word.com, and that's also another way to follow along.
Okay, that's super easy. So your Instagram is DottieML as well?
No, it's Astrodot, Astrodot.
Okay, that's cool. And what about Twitter? That's the same as well?
Same one, same, at Astrodot.
Okay, awesome. All right, so now we're going to switch to the questions that came in earlier from the super secret agent trainees. And then if we have some time in the end, they're going to ask live questions. All right.
Okay, cool.
So secret agent DJ asked, are aliens real?
What a fun question, and what a interesting question. So I did not see anything alive besides other humans when I was in space. But that doesn't mean that there aren't forms of alien life. In fact, as we've continued to learn more from Hubble and now the James Webb Telescope, Kepler, all these different types of telescopes, it's very likely that there are planets out there that fall into this same type of zone like Earth, that's the right distance from their star, and probably could have life. In fact, maybe even in our solar system, we will find other forms of life. Now, what will this life look like? Well, it's very likely going to be very small, maybe. I mean, but there's been a lot of time out there around other stars, so maybe there's larger life. We're not sure. But again, being curious, I wonder, and I'm glad you wonder too.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. Secret Agent K asked, what does it feel like in space?
Ooh, it feels like you're in a swimming pool without the water. Like you get to float in any direction, but you don't need the water to buoy you up like you do here on Earth. So that's just super fun. At first, it can be a little awkward because you kind of still behave like you're floating in water. And so sometimes you'll find yourself moving your arms like you would in the water, but it does nothing for you other than make you look like you're doing a funny chicken dance. But eventually you get to the point where you can just glide smoothly, like that one picture of me floating like Superwoman. And that just becomes really, really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Secret Agent Cam asked, what helped you believe that women can go to space?
Well, as I talked about, Sally Ride was a big inspiration. And I didn't even realize until much later that 20 years prior to Sally Ride flying in space, Valentina Tereshkova flew in space. And she's the first woman in space. She was a Russian cosmonaut. So people didn't talk a lot about her. But having women that went before helped me realize, oh, this is like a real career path that I could pursue. And it looks so interesting because it is challenging and it takes you away from planet Earth, which I always thought would be amazing.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Secret Agent Trini AV asked, are you able to land on a star?
Well, we can't land on stars, and that is because they are a plasma. So they are not solid. They may have a core in the very, very interior, but that's so far in that things would just burn up or be crushed under the heat. So stars are so super interesting in how they are creating energy and fusing atoms together and giving off all this light energy, but also heat and other electromagnetic energy. So we cannot land on stars, but that doesn't keep us from studying them. And we have all different types of ways that we study the stars, thankfully, because they're really interesting.
Awesome. Thank you. Secret Agent Mal asked, favorite thing about going to space? What's your favorite thing?
Ooh, I always say these three favorite things because it's hard to really narrow it down to one. So, first favorite thing professionally was working on those spacewalks. That took just so much teamwork and concentration, and it was just really rewarding. We ran into problems, but we worked with our ground team, and it was very successful. So, that was professionally really one of my favorite moments. Um, as a geologist, some of my favorite moments were looking back at Earth and seeing places that I either recognized or that I knew about as a geologist. And so looking at Earth was amazing and looking out the window. And then my daughter was 3 when I flew in space. And so playing, I had a lot of fun flipping around and spinning and floating food and catching it. It was just really a joy to be there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Secret Agent Taylor Swifty asked, are you a techie?
I'm not a huge techie. I try to learn. Like I said, I'm a curious person. So I have done a little tiny bit of coding. I definitely use a lot of technology for my everyday life. And I try to utilize applications that we find on computers that help me do work. But I am not trained officially in technology and therefore don't have like a huge background in it. I'm more of a consumer of technology.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Secret Agent Spock asked, let's see, what are the life lessons you can share?
Yeah. So I think again, going back to those 4 words, I mean, life lessons as examples of me being curious, like when I was little, and helping that spur me into being interested in space, and then as an adult remaining curious. Um, And then, like I mentioned, being challenged, like always working hard and recognizing that I can do things. It just might take more effort, and I might need some support, and need to ask for help. And I want to be brave and courageous. And I did that from all different ways. Like I love to climb mountains, like I mentioned, but again, that can sometimes be very scary. Or have I became a diver, and I had to learn how to feel comfortable being underwater and at great depths. So just staying courageous, and then finally, like I said, turning around and champion for others. So whether I was a teacher or a coach, or now I do a lot of volunteering and outreach, and I love doing all those things. So making sure to turn around and give it back too.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're perfect timing because now we have questions for live audience members. So, all right, tell us your secret agent name and what is your question?
Secret agent. My name is Basania Jerry. I'm in 8th grade, and my question is, how do you eat in space?
Ooh, how do you eat in space? Thank you, Secret Agent Beth.
Yeah. Well, all of our food comes up in different types of packages, and some of those packages have to be rehydrated. So, so the package has like a nozzle, and we'll stick a needle in and fill it with water, a certain amount of water. And then we always use scissors to open the package. And you can use lots of different types of utensils to eat in space. One of my friend's favorite type is to use chopsticks, because the water allows the food to adhere or stay on the chopsticks, and then they can just float it into their mouth. I use a spoon a lot because there's a lot of sauces, and we try to really scrape the packages clean so that there are no smelly leftovers, because bacteria and stuff can start to grow on those leftovers. So we don't want that. It becomes really smelly. But that's how we eat in space. And I would say one of my favorite foods while I was in space was macaroni and cheese. Maybe partly because my daughter was 3 and we were eating that a lot at home. But also, the food, like I said, has to be rehydrated, and some foods just don't rehydrate very well. But macaroni and cheese is made to be rehydrated. So it always seemed to taste just right.
That's a great question. Does mac and cheese taste the same in space that it does on Earth?
Well, everything in space tastes a little less flavorful, and that's because our body fluids shift up, and so our noses actually get kind of stuffy because all of our sinuses, the fluids in our sinuses kind of shift up, and our faces get really round, and so we don't taste things as well. Like, you need your nose to help with taste. And so we sometimes, to combat this, we add like hot sauce or garlic paste or a pesto or things like that add a little bit more flavor. Macaroni and cheese mostly taste the same. Maybe just it was a little less salty tasting to me.
And the hot sauce and everything, is it as hot as it is on Earth, or is it like hotter in space?
It is as hot, and there's actually really cool science behind how hot sauce works. And so it is as hot, and that is why actually they think, the theory is that people like it, because it provides a little actual pain. The heat in pepper is the same that we experience as heat, as in like hot heat, and it creates just a tiny bit of pain, so it makes us aware that we're eating things. Apparently, that's the theory behind it.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Any other questions live from the students? I saw somebody raise their hand.
I'm Secret Agent K, and my question is, like, do you guys swim in space, or can you just like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, when y'all go to things in space, how do you go to it?
Okay, Secret Agent K, thanks for the question. So she asked, do you swim in space? And how can you swim? Like, is that the right question, Secret Agent K? Yeah, okay.
We don't swim in space. We can't have, like, the way the International Space Station is set up, we could not have a swimming pool because the water would probably creep along the walls and go everywhere. And if it was jolted somehow, it would float through the module. So we can't swim in space. But on Earth, we use water to help us train for space because it makes us float. And so we use that as what we would call like an analog or something that's similar, and provides us with a similarity to space. Cool question.
Awesome, thank you.
My name is Anne Rose, and I wanted to ask, how does a space shuttle work?
So, Secret Agent, I didn't get your name, but let's see. You said, how does a space shuttle work?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you.
That is a really good question. Well, there are a lot of systems on the space shuttle. So the first ones that get you off the ground are the engines, of course. And we have a combination of solid rocket fuel that was burned in the white solid rocket boosters. And then we also have liquid fuel. In our case, it was hydrogen and oxygen meeting in engines. So the first stage was solid, the second stage was liquid. And then there are all these systems on board the shuttle that helped it work. We had to have computers that control and bring all the information and data together for the space shuttle. We had navigation devices. So we use both information provided for the ground that knows where we're at, but then also we can have stars tracked in through our sensors, and when we're coming in for landing, we have other navigation tools. We have electricity. We had fuel cells that created electricity for the space shuttle. And a byproduct of our fuel cells was water. So we could then have the water for drinking and also for some bathing and things like that. We had to have a life support system, something that pulls out the carbon dioxide and provides oxygen at the right balance. So we had tanks of oxygen in the payload bay, and then we also had a way to remove the carbon dioxide so that we don't get essentially poisoned by it. Eventually it could build up so high we could get poisoned by it. So we had and then there's so many more communication systems, right? We have to be able to talk back to ground, we have to show video and audio and all these different things. So we had at least 13 systems that we learned as astronauts, and that meant we studied a lot. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. All right, looks like we have a long line of secret agents. Awesome.
My name is Secret Agent E.
Secret Agent E. Okay, what's your question? Oh, perfect. Thank you for moving that down.
My question is, how does the spaceship work?
How does a spaceship work?
Yeah, well, how about we watch that video really quick? Because I kind of talked through some things, but I think it might be fun to, if I shared that video just really quick. So let me share a screen. Okay, so we get strapped into the space shuttle, and we are actually there for 2 hours, and finally we got the clearance that we could go to space. So our engines are going to light here. And those are burning the chemicals. And then the solids are going to light. And that is a lot of energy. You saw us shaking. So we started shaking, and then all of this energy is being used to mostly get us up. And then it starts to carry us down the line too. So what you'll first see are those white solid rocket boosters. They're going to fall off of after they're used up because they'll have spent all their energy. So they're going to come off here, and then they fall into the ocean and are recovered, and then we continue on the three main engines. So there they go. They fall off. We continue on the three main engines for another 5 minutes, and then that gets us a long ways downrange. In fact, when those engines cut off, we are over England, and then we kind of are in an orbit just around the Earth, and we keep going around the Earth every 90 minutes. So that's kind of how the space shuttle worked. And I'll stop sharing that.
Very cool. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Hello. Yes, we can see you and hear you.
My name is Agent, and my question is, can you drink or eat something other? Can you drink something other than water?
Can you drink something other than water? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We drink out of pouches, kind of like a Capri Sun. We have those pouches and we stick a straw in, but our straw is special. It has a little clip on it so that the liquid doesn't squeeze out and float away. But we can drink coffee. I had coffee in the morning for breakfast. We have fruit drinks, so like orange juice, maybe different types of fruit juices. And then we can also have smoothies. And all of those require adding water, shaking up the pouch, and then drinking it later. But it tastes pretty good. And you don't just have to drink out of a pouch. You could actually cut the pouch top off, and the liquid would once again adhere inside because of the way bonds work with water, and so the surface tension would hold it in the cup, and you could drink it that way. It's just a little bit more messy. It's not as predictable, so the straw is a lot faster and it keeps the vehicle clean.
Very cool. Thank you.
My name is Secret Agent Lovely, and my question is, you said you could do flips in space. Do you think you could do that on Earth?
So Secret Agent Lovely says, do you do flips in space like you do on Earth? Is that the right question?
I am not a talented gymnast, and so I can only do cartwheels. And when I was younger, your age, I could do a couple of back handsprings on a trampoline, but I was not able to do the types of flips like I can in space. I could flip around and around and around and just keep going, and it was so amazing. So we can do things in space that we can't do here on Earth because we keep coming back to the surface of the Earth due to gravity. But when we're going around the Earth in microgravity, we are able to just keep flipping and flipping or spinning. We can do like ice skaters. We can put our arms out and then pull them in really quick and spin and spin and spin. And it's really amazing and fun.
Very cool. Thank you.
My name is Secret Agent Cam, and my question is, why do humans have to go to space to study the planets? Why can't machines do it?
Ooh, such a great question. Well, actually do a combination, right? We study from the Earth's surface out with different types of telescopes. We also have telescopes that are above and orbiting Earth, or even way out so far that they're in a perfect position called the Lagrange point, and they are able to just stay in a point and study. And we get a lot of good information that way. That's true. We also send probes and satellites out to different planets. You see how we have rovers on Mars. We've sent rovers and explorers to the moon, and probes out into our solar system. Again, we get back a lot of great data and information. But by sending humans, we often learn about our own bodies and how they operate in space, but also how it compares to how we operate here on Earth. And that has been really important in solving problems with medicine and understanding how to better fight diseases, better work with cancers, learn how to work when muscles atrophy. Here on Earth, they often atrophy for sure by aging. And then also if people have to have bed rest or are limited to certain motions. So we learn about a lot about ourselves also when we send humans into space, and humans doing experiments too. But you're right, we can do a lot of learning about space by putting machines out there. And I just want you to think about it. Really, you do live in space. Like Earth is in space, right? We are in the universe. And so we are technically on our own spaceship. We just don't often think of Earth as a spaceship, but we are learning about ourselves in space. So think about that next time too, kind of flipping the question a little bit. We live in space.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like we have a couple more questions.
My name is Secret Agent B, and my question is, if I wanted to become an astronaut, what would have to be my educational background?
So Secret Agent B asked, if I wanted to become an astronaut, what would be my educational background? Is that right? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that is great. So keep really focusing, making sure you're always taking science classes, math classes like every year. Keep using technology. Don't just be a technology consumer like me. Also learn how to work with the technology and program it, and learn how to build or how to take things apart. That's the engineering pieces. Figure out how things work. If there's things that break or needs to be fixed at home, you can do a lot of finding stuff on YouTube and figuring out how to fix those things, and that makes you an engineer. And so as you're moving up through school, there will be more opportunities for specific types of classes. But in general, always keep taking your STEM classes. And then you also, to become an astronaut that works at NASA, you also need to have a bachelor's degree in one of those STEM fields and a master's degree, so a further study as well. But don't let that overwhelm you, because sometimes we can think, oh my gosh, that's so much learning. Just take every year a couple courses at a time, and you will be very successful.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Last question.
Last question. Okay.
Which planet would be more? Oh, my secret agent name is Ice. Which planet would be more safe for humans? Jupiter, Mars, or Neptune?
Okay, so Secret Agent Ice asks which planet is more safer for humans? Neptune, Mars, or which one?
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Definitely Mars, because Mars is a rocky planet, so it has a surface that we can actually land on. But all of these are challenging planets, so we can't as humans land on Neptune or Saturn or Jupiter. They're all gaseous planets, but we might go to their moons, which are solid, and we're looking at them as places that might have life in our solar system. But for right now, Mars is the logical step after returning to the moon. So I want to, as we are wrapping up here, just remind you that we are returning to the moon, And the cool thing is that when we go back to the moon this time, we are doing an international effort with both public agencies, agencies that are run by our governments, as well as private entities, companies that are joining us. And we are going to land first women and people of color. So the space is becoming less limited, and that's how it should be. It should be unlimited and open for possibilities and for all peoples. And that's just really exciting to me. So I hope that's one of the things you take away from today, is that you are invited to be a part of this effort. And I really look forward to seeing what all of you will be doing in your futures too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, very much.
So to wrap up, we're going to do key takeaways. But first, we're going to do a quick 60-second, like hot potato style thing. So any toys you played with as a child?
Oh, do you want me to answer?
Yes, really quick.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I played with Legos. I played with Barbie. I love to draw and create. So I had lots of crayons and color pencils and things like that.
Awesome. And what about any video games?
I didn't get to play video games other than my dad on he worked for Hewlett Packard, and so he had this game where you could plug in like how much you weighed on Earth, and then it would calculate it for the planets. But I didn't have any PlayStations or stuff when I was growing up.
Okay. What about sci-fi, like Star Trek, like Jedi, or Star Wars, Trekkie?
I'm a Star Wars girl. I remember when the first movies came out, and I really always liked Princess Leia.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. So key takeaways. Be curious. Ask for what you want. Work hard. Be brave and courageous, and be a champion. Anything else you want to add?
I'm looking forward to all of you doing those things, and I wish you all the best on this school year. Keep at it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Dottie. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to the school for being a part of this.
Thank
We're
you.
very excited.